Thank you all for joining this panel discussion with us today. We're going to be exploring what delivering customer outcomes truly means going into 2025. So we've got a lot that we want to try and get through in this hour. So fingers crossed we try to hit every point, every question that we have. But if not, there's always a time for round two. I hope everyone. I just put it out there. So, so I'm already booking time in your calendars. So in this webinar, we're going to try and cover a few topics here. So we want to try and look at what frameworks there might be for measuring value realization when it comes to delivering customer outcomes. We want to look at, what it means to be delivering on the customer promise. We want to try and understand maybe what crafting effective success plan looks like when it comes to delivering customer outcomes. We want to also understand what being a ghost team member means, and how do you navigate different stakeholder emotions and motivations and that sort of stuff. We also want to try and tap into understanding the difference between internal versus external goals and how do you align the two between different organizations and different stakeholders as well. And then if we get some time, I also want to try and understand the importance or the need for having a philosophy when you're going into customer success. To help us navigate across all of these different topics, we've got a couple of panelists joining us today, as you can see. So we've got Marcus. Marcus Wrench is the founder of Remarkable and is a recognized thought leader in customer success, as well as a champion of customer value-led growth for many different SaaS companies in his career. With a proven track record of helping businesses align product usage with measurable customer outcomes, he brings his expertise here to help us understand the importance of crafting strategies, driving renewals, expansion, and advocacy. And as an advocate himself of customer-first philosophies, Marcus's insights are incredibly insightful here, and I'm looking forward to tapping into that. We've also got Virginia Bloom joining us, who's the manager of customer experience at Acclaimant and is a seasoned customer success leader with extensive experience driving strategic outcomes for enterprise clients. Her expertise lies in driving expansion and revenue as well through aligning customer needs with measurable business goals and fostering strong customer relationships. And then fostering as well a deep understanding of navigating complex stakeholder dynamics and building customer-centric strategies. So thank you so much for joining us as well, Virginia. And then we've got Mohammed too, Mohammed Al-Qag, who's from Jordan, hailing in from Jordan, that I met last year. So I can't wait to go back again soon, one day. Who's the founder of CSME and an advocate of customer success in the Middle East and a strategic CSM at Oracle. Through his work in leading strategic customer success at prominent organizations, Mohammed has helped drive impactful strategies that focus on value realization, and his leadership in fostering collaboration, delivering measurable results positions him as an exceptional panelist for this webinar. So thank you, Mohammed, as well for joining us today. And last but not least, of course, we've got Laura Barnes. Laura was the SVP of Customer Success and Renewals at Sitecore and has recently joined Crown Peak as their new Chief Customer Officer. Laura is a dedicated customer success leader with a wealth of experience in client management, team leadership, looking at different customer success strategies, and a background in building scalable customer success value-led frameworks that hopefully we could tap into a lot during this panel discussion. She also has experience in delivering measurable business outcomes and has a proven track record of building teams and processes that drive these customer outcomes for different clients. So I'm looking forward to tapping into everybody's experiences in this discussion. So a bit about myself. I'm Mukhtar. I'm one of the co-founders of Retentional. It's a customer success planning software that supports the strategic and CS team, with aligning their product adoption and usage with customer outcomes. So I'm hoping we could try and maybe cover a lot of the different sort of topics that we care about here together in this panel. So if you have any questions, guys, feel free to pop in any questions that you might have in the Q&A box. And don't forget, this is recorded as well. So I'm hoping for anyone that couldn't attend can also watch this back as well. So without further ado, I thought we'd kick off with our first question. And that first question being pointing to yourself, Marcus. I hope you can kick this off for us, and then we'll go around the panel. So when we talk about delivering customer outcomes, what does that truly mean? When we say what's the first idea that comes to mind when we talk about delivering customer outcomes, traditionally, the definition would be, as a result of customer expectations, certain things that customers expect based on them working with us and our organization. Yourself, Marcus, what's your thoughts on delivering customer outcomes and how would you define that?
Yeah, it's a super important question. And it's a foundation of customer success management in general. I mean, If you're not able to deliver the outcomes customers are expecting, then why would customers stick around with your product?
Exactly.
So the first step is to really gain clarity about customer outcomes. To really talk to customers, understand what you really want to get out of the product. And typically there are two different things. So the first part is the more obvious one. These are the business outcomes. Those are things like increasing revenue, reducing costs, improving productivity, stuff like this. So if we are delivering on these outcomes, we've already made a big step. But what our customers care more about are their personal outcomes that are related to these numbers and figures. So if we're talking about the human being, no one cares about numbers on a spreadsheet or on a dashboard. But what they care about is the meaning behind. So if you've helped your customer to double their growth or something, maybe the people who are working with a product, they are getting a raise or they're getting a promotion. Or more simple, they now can sleep better at night. So if we can address both the business outcomes and the personal outcomes, then we're really able to highlight all the value that customers are getting from working with us. And it's absolutely important that we have clarity about it. One particular problem customer success manager often faces, they're saying, hey, I'm working with this customer, but they don't know what they want to accomplish. But in this situation, it's up to you as a customer success manager to figure it out, or more precisely, to help your customers figure out. So we are often talking about being your customer's trusted advisor in customer success management. And this is the perfect opportunity to position yourself as such an advisor right from the beginning. And you help your customers to really nail their desired outcomes. So you need to create clarity and also accountability. So because if you are comparing, okay, what were the expected results and what are the actual results, then you need to have something that you can really compare, not ensure that you're not talking about different things. So this is such an essential step in the process. So customer success managers really need to do the discovery right and really define with the customer what is it that they want to get out of the product.
I love that. Yeah, I love these so many important points there. Mohammed, let me bring you in on that. So what's your definition of delivering customer outcomes?
Yeah, thank you, Mukhtar, and thank you, Marcus, for the definition. When I look at the customer outcomes, usually I look at the company goal, then the business goal, and then dig down from those two goals and try to understand now, based on those goals that you have put as a company, what we want to achieve and how we're going to achieve those, and start to slice it down into a piece of achievable initiatives that help the team to deliver or to achieve. That what will make the personal outcome happens while you are delivering towards the company goal. By doing this, you help the person and you help the company to achieve the outcomes. Usually, I do this at the beginning of the year, trying to understand the company goal and then what are the business goals, and start to put the initiatives for the customer success plan and how we want to deliver towards those goals. Here we can define the outcomes based on the company mission or the company goal.
Amazing. What about yourself, Virginia? What's your thoughts on that question?
So I think Marcus and Mohammed have done a really great job of giving us a definition. I'll go a step further and say that when we're looking at the business goals, the company goals, and the personal goals, making sure that we actually add benchmarks in, that there are actually numbers attached to it, that we're not allowing things to be a little bit nebulous, but then also allowing your customer to use their personal goals to find business goals if they haven't found those, and vice versa. It may be that they don't see an opportunity where they can make themselves shine inside their own organization by achieving those goals. By attaching a personal goal for your stakeholder to the business goal, you can start to build that championship internally. So it's not just about helping them achieve just the business goal or just defining what that business goal is, but making sure that they're leveraging that to build out their personal goals as well. And then sort of playing those towards each other and making sure that they're all driving in the same direction, so that not only are you building, your relationship with the business, but you're also building your relationship with that individual stakeholder, which will allow you to expand and grow as they expand and grow.
Amazing. And yourself, Laura, what was your take beyond that?
So I don't think we have much choice other than to become very much more outcome based, as working within SaaS has changed so much over the past 5 years since COVID that companies are looking at their vendors, they're looking at the margins, they're looking at the effectiveness of the technology that they're using, and if you aren't delivering for them, there are competitors out there that are going to do it at a cut price in order to win the business and win market share. So unless you're looking at outcomes, I think you are you're being left behind, and you need to really look at turning around your strategy now at the beginning of 2025 in order to focus in. And those outcomes, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It just needs to be 2 or 3 objectives that you're looking at for that customer. You need to, as Virginia said, you need to measure it so that you can show what impact you've had at the beginning of this year versus the end, or when you're going into those QBRs and you're getting to a renewal point when you're discussing that. Otherwise, you're on the back foot. You haven't got anything tangible to really show as the impact that you're having for that company in them utilizing the technology or the service that you're providing.
I love that. Yeah, it's almost as you were saying this. There's no choice now, right?
No.
Especially going into 2025, there is no choice other than delivering on customer outcomes. And it leads us perfectly into the next question around, well, if we're talking about customer objectives or what your customers' goals are, then maybe I'll pose this to yourself, Mohammed, around how do you be strategic around that? Like, how do you then focus on what is an important goal or what is a customer outcome that they're trying to uncover essentially, and on what are ways or strategies that we could maybe implement to try and get into those core customer needs?
Yeah, so working with the customer and try to define the framework or understanding the desired outcome from using your product or your services. Usually you will come up with a list of like what they want and what they need and a mix of everything. Building a framework around what the customer needs at first, and then try to deliver as much as you can from what the customer needs, that you can show them value. Then go to what the customer want, and while you are delivering what they need, you discuss what they want, and by going deep with what they want, this might be a good feedback to your development, that you can improve and develop your product that you will deliver to the customer. But usually I focus on what the customer needs based on the industry, based on my on the best practices, and try to deliver what they need first. That is the quick wins that we can always show the customer, always present value to them, and show that we can deliver and we can satisfy them. That it allows us some time to dig down onto what they want, so we can further elaborate on how we can deliver that and what development can do to deliver that and what customer is really wants, so we can deliver that.
I love that. And what about yourself, Marcus? What would your take be on that? So, for example, looking at, I know you touched on a lot of the personal maybe outcomes or the versus the business outcomes. When it comes to strategies in ways that you can try and uncover what some of those needs are, what would that be from your opinion?
So to me, the framework that things are essentially coming down is we need to make a gap analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the customer objectives, and we have defined them and we have locked them in. And we also need to understand where our customers now. A simple example, let's say you're selling a sales tool and your customers are buying your tool because they're missing their sales quota. So they have something like 70% sales quota attainment. And their goal is to get to 100%. And your mission is to support your customers in accomplishing that goal. So you need to help them find a way to close this 30% gap. And based on this gap, you build your customer success plans. So you outline all the steps that customers need to take to close this 30% gap. So you're talking about the problems need to solve, the tasks need to complete, and also what you need to provide as a customer success manager. What kind of content and services do you need to provide? So to enable your customers, to enable them to solve the problems on their own. So that's essentially the framework that we should be using. We build these customer success plans based on the gap between our customers' desired outcomes and their current performance.
And Virginia, I know that you at Claimant, you've been trying to do exactly that essentially, right? And I'd love to understand your take on that. How would you look at essentially understanding what those customer outcomes are for your customers?
So I think you hit on it a little bit earlier. We have some customers that have a really difficult time defining what they want their outcomes to be, what they want their goals to be. So working with my team to make sure that we build a repository of things that we know our product can do to help people be successful. And then to Marcus's point, figuring out which of those things fulfill the gap that we see in what you're doing. So not fully relying on the customer to know how we can help them specifically, but making sure that they understand their business well enough that we can translate to them what we can do to fill those gaps. So that's one of the ways that we've been looking at building out our success plans and building out opportunity for our customers, is taking a look to, again, to what Marcus said, figuring out what those gaps are, and then figuring out specifically where we can fill those in based off of our customers, our previous customers. I think you asked some questions about being customer first. I think if your customer and your product if the paths are diverging too much, that's something you need to look at internally. If your product is going one way and your customers are going the other way, your customers are the direction you should be going, because that's going to tell you what the market wants, what the market is looking to have. So, it is working with our customers to figure out, where those gaps are, also helps us to figure out where our gaps are so that we can build a better product for them.
I love that. And I know, Laura, there's a question actually that I've earmarked for you that touches some of the topics that we've got here. But in generally speaking, when it comes to just customer outcomes and looking at the strategies around that, what would be some of the quick wins that you'd probably identify going into like a new organization like yourself now?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, Virginia nailed it with, a lot of customers really don't know what they need to achieve, specifically in terms of like SMART objectives. They have an understanding, and also, they've also been on a journey with you. The initial purchase of any technology changes over time, objectives change over time, budgets change over time, and also stakeholders do as well. So really aligning all of those pieces every year with those customers is really important. But the level set on the expectation of what the product can do versus what the customer's expecting is the biggest one to really nail down and work out, because that can really hold you back if you haven't addressed some of those gaps, as Marcus said, and ensuring that you've got a strategy, a number of areas, a number of bullets, objectives in order to work through those, in how you're working with the product team, and that you're working with the services team, the support team, in order to move through that. If you need, because a lot of customers within SaaS have very customizable capabilities, and so that is also something. Every customer is unique. There's not many technologies out there that are very vanilla in terms of their offering. And if you work within those companies, I'm very envious, because that is much easier than working with very customizable businesses and customers that have varying degrees of requirements from these pieces of technology. But my whole philosophy around this is you've got to set the objectives, you've got to understand that customer journey. And I think you really, across your products and that journey, you really need to define out what those customers should be achieving at certain points in their journey as well. And that really creates what I call a value realization framework. And in my previous company, we adapted that framework based on a product and a journey cycle with those customers to really understand what they should be achieving with the product and what does it mean to adopt that product in a 25% or 50% or even 75%. And then how do we determine what product features get us to that? So then you can really track it, and there's a capability to track it too, because otherwise it's very difficult to measure how a customer's adopting. You know, I asked a CSM recently, how do you measure your success? And they were like, well, if my customer's happy, that's great. And I'm like, oh God, we need some kind of measures to show the progress. Otherwise, you know, depending on what stakeholder you're going into a QBR with, they could literally hang you by saying we don't think that we're getting, you know, value from your technology. So really understanding what a framework could look like across your products and how you would measure and track it with product usage to then determine how a customer then adopts the platform. And then you can, you know, once you've got that view, you're always able to go back to that customer and say, look, you've got this far, we've done these things, you've adopted these features, but if you did X, Y, and Z, you'd get to another level of ROI. You know, you've always got a plan. There's always a future plan. I think a lot of times the customer experiences that I've gone through where customers have sadly left is because they didn't have a plan, or they couldn't see a future, or they feel that they've gone through that process with the company for a period of time and they haven't achieved what they needed to achieve because there isn't that clear plan or future plan as to where they've got to now and what they need to do next. So that, yeah, that's what I would suggest.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much that we can go into there. I'm actually thinking, Mohammed, from your point of view as well, because a lot of the clients that you work with are probably super high value, right? Super high value, maybe. I'm assuming their ARRs are probably really big. When it comes to managing the different stakeholders that you're working with in the organization, how do you manage a lot of the different motivations or the different, you know, ideas of what outcomes that they would want to have based on that? So is there like an element, I'm assuming there's elements of maybe framework that might be involved, or understanding what those moments of high impact are, to then try and then, I guess, proactively drive that outcome?
Yeah, so usually, listening to all the stakeholders and their desired outcomes, trying to bring all together and tie it back to the company goal, where, that will bring everybody to the same point, back to the same point with a different, maybe different perspective, but it's all back to one goal, which is the company goal, although have different perspective or different stakeholders having their personal goal, or if you want to call it. But if you bring it back to the company goal, then you will be able to define one goal or a goal that you want to achieve with different stakeholders. And managing stakeholders, it depends on where they are in the hierarchy of the company. And the language you use with each stakeholder should not be the same, because everyone has his interest and you should speak to his interest. That will help you to deliver value to each one on his level and show the value that you are delivering to your stakeholders. This helps a lot to define a set of goals that they are all agreed to, which is again tied to the company goal, to the business goal, and achievable, where it allows you to deliver value as soon as possible.
I love that. And I see you were nodding with that as well, Marcus, around what Mohammed's points were around that. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that same question. How do you then kind of create that ability to almost handhold that customer through that journey?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If you're working with larger customers, it's essential that you deliver value to all of the stakeholders, because at the end of the day, there is, let's call it a buying committee, and there's also a renewal committee. And if someone says, hey, it didn't work for me, then the renewal is in jeopardy. So what I believe in is that you should create some kind of stakeholder value mapping. That you really understand, okay, who are the stakeholders involved and what are their goals. And then that you're regularly tracking them and updating them to understand, okay, where are we in each of the individual journeys. So, and the complex part is that that you also need to demonstrate value to stakeholders that you're not interacting with regularly. So when let's say you're running a QBR, and in the QBR are present most likely the people who are using your product and probably the manager. But also, especially these days, it's important to also get finance on board. So the CFO is a very important stakeholder these days. But most likely you will never get a chance to talk to them. So you also must find a way to demonstrate value remotely to those stakeholders that you will never meet in person. And one key aspect in doing so is that you're really building customer relationships and leverage the champions you're working with. Because those champions, they have the insider knowledge. They understand better than you what the CFO cares about. So you can use that to your advantage.
Mhm.
And same with other stakeholders. So it's really at the end of the day that you can really say, okay, we've created the desired outcomes of all the stakeholders that are involved with the purchase decision, or more precisely with the renewal decision.
I know, Virginia, you made a point earlier as well around being the champion, right? Finding that champion as well. How would you say you can nurture champions within those organizations to then be able to do, as Marcus was saying, become almost like an internal influencer that goes out there and running around within their organization?
Well, I know we're talking. I know you're well acquainted with success plans, but building out the customer success plans and then your sort of internal account plan. I know for our team, every once in a while we'll say like our internal goal is to make this person a rock star where they work. We're going to do whatever we need to do to make this person excel in every way that we need to. We need to figure out who they need to impress, who they need to get information to, and how do we do that, and almost make that person, to Marcus's point, that stakeholder you're never going to meet, make them a secondary owner of some of these outcomes and metrics that we know are tied to our primary. So then you're able to, again, leverage that person that you're turning into a champion, because you're their ace in the back pocket. You're helping to make them make their point. You're helping them to get more internal resources, build their team, get them what they need. And so they're going to leverage, they're going to fight for, using your tool or having you on board, not just because of your tool, but because of you and your expertise, and what you're helping them to accomplish. So I think one of the important things that I think we've a little bit touched on here, but I just want to say it really explicitly, is when you have outcomes, when you've decided what these outcomes are, when you've decided how to measure them, making sure that you have a specific stakeholder attached to it, whether that's a specific role or a specific name, making sure that you have a person attached to that so that you do know how to speak to that outcome, you do know how you're couching that information. But also, Laura mentioned earlier, stakeholders changing being a little bit of a bump in everybody's road. If you do have a change in a stakeholder, knowing that you need to go back and reevaluate those outcomes. Those might not be the things that these people want to address anymore. They might have other things that they think are more important. There may be other business goals that are now going to be coming to the forefront. So making sure that you know exactly who is invested in which outcomes you have, not just being able to define those, but being able to see who their internal owner is of that, so that you know when those things might not be applicable anymore.
I love that. It's almost assigning a captain for each outcome and saying you're the accountable party. You need to be driving this internally, and almost putting the onus on them, isn't it? And Laura, I know you with the framework, there's some elements of that, right? And I'd love if we could touch more on the framework that you developed with when you were at Sitecore, and seeing how you essentially mapped out those moments of impact and then mapped out based on the usage, for example, and then how you link that together to then drive those customer outcomes. Could you touch a little bit more on that?
Yeah, it really was built out based on trying to drive adoption, because we always knew, without any kind of telemetry, we always knew that our customers were driving roughly, 40-50% adoption, and we just wanted to drive that little bit more. And if we drove that little bit more, and how were we going to drive that? Because we were sending out surveys and asking customers to fill in a survey to tell us how they were using the platform, because we didn't have any telemetry. But what really came about over the past couple of years was we implemented telemetry on our SaaS products, and it was really insightful because it could then provide an incredible insight into who was using the tool, what they were using it for, what features they were using. We started to do in-app videos as well around like follow me capability to give customers the opportunity to understand what other additional features they could be using, with little tips on, if you use this, your ROI could go up X. And it really helped those customers understand what they should be focusing on and why, but also how. And I think that's the biggest thing around driving adoption and creating value, is being very explicit with your customers as to how they should be doing that. And then what are those specific things that they need to do to get to that? And there's the real driver for us was around adoption, but our customers were benefiting from having that value framework, which led to outcomes, and they were measurable as well. And we could see the telemetry internally, because we had built this methodology to really track adoption, but then we could flag up what was actually not working in the best way, and what we could do to mitigate that. And I think when you're going into those QBRs and you do have those types of statistics, and you can see how a customer is adopting and what more they can be doing, that then provides, I think it was Greg Danes on the Churn Doctor talked about churn, and how customers are more likely, if they're getting some kind of results, they're more likely to stay with you, like 2 times. But if they're 4 times more likely to stay with you if they were going to get, they're getting additional value. And if you were achieving objectives, then they were actually 8 times. I think those are the stats. It's quite incredible. So how I think about things now is you need to be able to show what's next. And if you're not able to show what's next, and you're just having a nice phone call conversation around, how's the account, and how's the objectives you're following, but they're not really measurable, and you're not really driving and challenging. And I think that's another big thing we haven't talked about, is you need to be able to challenge your customer. You need to say, what you're doing isn't the best way. I've seen it been done by other customers in this way. Potentially you could be considering doing it, an alternative way, because that's going to drive more for you, based on their objectives or ROI, or their measures. Because if you're not challenging them, what value are they getting from you as a CSM? You need to be giving them that overview as well, as to what they could be doing differently, rather than just give them the copy paste from everybody. And that really then, for me, we talked about, how do you position yourself? And I think as a CSM, you're always there with an empathetic ear to understand what they're trying to do, and how work out and problem solve for them as to how they work across your organization, and how they should use your tool in a better way, and mitigate the competitors that are always knocking at their doors. So you do need to care about your customer, and how you care about them, and how you then put those specific objectives in place, and they see that you're driving that. That's also exceptionally key to the success of you in that account, and how you break through with those additional relationships internally with that customer.
Exactly. It's almost as if if you were putting all this effort in, and then the customer doesn't see that it's you actually that's supporting them, then it goes out in vain, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we go back to what Marcus said earlier about the personal objectives. These people have personal objectives too. You need to take that into account when you're managing your customer, because everyone's there to drive something forward and succeed. And understanding that from a personal perspective, as well as a business outcome perspective, is very important in building that relationship, because then they do see that you care about them and what they're trying to achieve and how they should be going about the strategy that you should be pushing forward.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And that leads me into the next question around where, Marcus, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. When we're sort of trying to drive these conversations and we're working with the customer towards trying to show the fact that we're working and supporting them in their goals, well, how do you get them to give you those goals in the first place? So what are strategies that you might want to put in place to say, well, you can trust me, I'm a trusted advisor. You need to, sort of, can you share those core details that your leaders have been telling you?
Yeah, what obviously doesn't work is when you're telling your customers, hey, I'm your trusted advisor, you can ask me anything and I will help you to become successful. No, you position yourself as a trusted advisor. Of course, it will not be complete with the first step from the beginning, but you need to build your position right from the beginning. So the best way is to start with a kickoff. So where customers get to know you, where you ask your customers about their business, about their goals, about all these things. And one very important thing is something that I'm seeing in customer success management quite often is that in customer conversations, CSMs are doing most of the talking.
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
And that's not how you become a trusted advisor, because it's not about you. You're not impressing your customers by sharing everything that you know. You build
But
that trust.
I think it's because they're not asking the right questions, or they're just not opening the floor to ask those questions enough.
Sometimes they didn't give the customer the opportunity to answer. Sorry, Marcos, but they get so excited and they introduce themselves in 15 minutes, but that's not what the customer wants to be.
Yeah.
Right, Marcos?
Yeah, you get your customers to open up by really showing them that you care about their success, that you are really ready to listen. So active listening, I think it's arguably the most important skill as a customer success manager, because it's you're building trust on steroids. If your customers feel that they are heard, that they are taken seriously, and that they're not just an entity in the CSP or a number somewhere. So you need to provide that kind of personal connection right from the beginning. You need to build the relationship from the very first moment. It's not working if the renewal date is in 30 days, then it's too late to start building a relationship.
And that's something you were saying, do you want to grab a coffee?
Yeah, and just add to that, back to the Laura comment where she said maybe they don't know what to ask. That's again, it's a customer success mistake. Before you jump in a call with the customer, you should do your homework. You should understand their business, their background, their industry challenges, business challenges, what projects they have, what project they might take. And if you build that knowledge, you will be able to ask questions. And sometimes, when you ask the first question, second question, the customer will feel that, okay, I got someone who listens to me. Then they will open up and they will start to talk. They will even talk to you before you ask the question. They will tell you things that, you didn't think about it, but because they realize that, okay, you are here, you prepared, you know what we are doing, you know us, and you ask the right questions. So take this one, and they will open up and they will start to give you more information than you would expect.
I think, Mohammed, you made a really good point. Doing the research so that you're asking the right questions also makes your customers feel like they're not starting at square one again, because you're probably not the person, the first person they've already talked to.
Yeah.
They've already done this. If they feel like they have to go back to square one and talk about who they are and what they do and why they're here and da 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 da, that's really discouraging, and it will damage your rapport right off the bat. You'll be starting in the negative. But if you show up and you say, hey, I know everything that sales knows about you, they've already told me, and this is the research I've done, and these are the questions I want to ask you because these are the questions that are pertinent to you and to your business, then that also tells them, like, hey, they're trying to give me forward momentum. They're not making me go back to square one. They're not making me start my story over again. I think this is a person who can help me move forward.
I love that. And there's a question in the Q&A that kind of ties well. I thought I'd ask it now. Is that when we're in the discovery stage, what are the most powerful questions we could ask, or the most telling questions? I'll leave that open to the floor if someone has a. Mohammed, you shake your head.
I would say it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the customer. There is no one question for all.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. At least from my perspective, it's difficult to define one question that I can ask to every and each customer. If I don't do my homework, if I don't understand the customer, their background, their business, I don't know what question I could ask.
You could ask that very personal one, which is, what are you personally trying to achieve in your role currently at this company? So it could be a real, like, straight in, what's your objective within your role?
Would you start with a personal question?
I don't know. It depends on how it's been. If it's been warm and you've actually met that person face to face, that's something that you could ask. How long have you been working here? What have you achieved so far? What are you personally trying to achieve? And then I wonder how I can help you get there. It's that. But I think that kind of questioning needs to be face to face rather than over a Zoom. I think being face to face with any customer is always so much more impactful because it's a lot more warming, and you've got contact. I think it's very difficult having those kinds of discussions over Zoom.
Yeah, especially with the in person, you spend like 15 minutes, you drink a coffee before you start the meeting.
Yeah.
That will put a good foundation for what's coming
Yeah.
next. Makes it easier, the ice breaking done already before the meeting, so you don't have to start from scratch. And
Definitely. And I think, Virginia, actually, you pointed out a quite interesting thing not long ago now, one of our previous conversations around going that above and beyond with certain customers, even in areas that might not be directly related to the work that you're doing together. All right. So, for example, I know that you gave the example in California, right, with the unfortunate wildfires going on there at the moment.
So yeah, that is one way that our team, or I'll say our company as a whole, tries to put ourselves in a position where we can universally say, like, we are a company, we are a group of people who care about you holistically. So our company, when there are natural disasters, we put within our product, within our success center, where you have all of the other, help center and all the other things that we use for self-service, we also have, completely unrelated, resources related to those natural disasters. So we recently just posted a list of resources for folks who are affected by the wildfires in California. And the feedback we've gotten is that it does, not only is it like a good and the right thing to do to be able to put our human side out there, but it also does communicate, like, hey, we took business time out of our day because we know that this is important, because we know that you as individuals are important. But I think it also speaks to the fact that we know that if our customers as individuals are not completely here in the conversation, we're not going to get as far. So what are the things that we can do to make sure that they feel fully engaged in what we're doing? And what are the things that we can provide that maybe are not directly related to our product, but do help our customers focus in not only on us being their partner, but on them feeling like they can contribute fully.
Yes, and on that point actually as well, Laura, that just on your answer earlier around asking them what their personal goals might be, at what point, I guess the question is how far can we push that? At what point is it, oh, there's a boundary here that we've crossed? And is there
You can pivot that, can't you? You can go into challenges. So you can pivot straight into, so what are the challenges you've been facing? And then you start to really understand the business goals. that they're up against and what they're needing to achieve. So there's different ways you can pivot the conversation to really get what you need. And then you can, from the business goals, you can ask them around, how are you doing against your measures? What are you measuring? And then what's the expectation? How far off are you from that measure? And what are you doing to get closer to that? And they might say, oh yeah, we're opening up an RFP, and that's when you start to get worried. But you can take the conversation in many different directions to understand that customer further. It's just you've got to do it in a very personable way rather than just a list of questions on a slide, right?
Exactly. I guess
Laura, I'm one of those people who will just, we'll go camera off and what do you need from me?
Yeah.
What do we need to do?
It's important. Yeah, one-on-one. It's got to be, how are we going to turn this around? If I've got the next 60 days, what do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that we're being measured against? And it's how do I get there? Come on, help me. And smile. You've got to be personable. It doesn't have to be serious. You're there to assist. And when as a leader, when you're pulled into very sticky situations, sometimes you don't have to have a very, very square conversation. It can be very personable, warm. You've been in a tough situation. You're both working through it. There's ways and means of getting to an end goal and meeting a joint objective.
You get a lot farther being just candid and saying, like, we both know where we are. We both know what the situation is. So what are we doing together to fix this? And I think that's part of the, when we talk about building rapport and, being the trusted advisor, part of that being trusted is that, I'm in this with you, that we're going to try to do this together. Yeah. But also that, I'm going to tell you what the limits are. I'm going to, we're not going to be changing the gravitational constant of the universe to be able to get whatever it is that you need. But I can tell you what we can do, what we can't do, what the timelines are. And then you can tell me which ones of those categories will be wins, which things are not going to be sufficient, so that, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. When they give you a big nebulous goal, we can pick which number is actually going to move the needle with your leadership or your team versus, we just throw the spaghetti at the wall and say, we did better with all of these numbers, and it doesn't move the needle anywhere. So being able to leverage that person to tell you what the win is, but also like, how do we help you win? Because you're the one who keeps us in the seat there.
Yep.
Exactly. I love that. Just the other question related to that I had was, Marcus, that you made a point around, I think it was a conversation that we had previously around doing the success planning and understanding that at the beginning before you get to account planning. I think it was a quote, if I'm not misquoting you. And I'd love to, if you could expand on that a bit more as well, related to this, where you're saying these are the outcomes of where we want to go, but then how do you then align that with your internal goals, right? And is there a rift between the two?
So what I'm often seeing is, or at least that's my impression, is that the internal account plans are prioritized over the customers and the customer outcomes. And yeah, it's obviously a grave mistake, because the simple truth is that your customers are paying your salaries. So it really doesn't matter if you're accomplishing your goals and if customers are not and deciding to cancel. Mm-hmm. So your internal goals, they must be aligned to the customer goals. So they need to be derived from it. And essentially, when you have these account plans, what we want to do is we want to grow our accounts. And what we also must understand is that account growth is tied to customer value growth. So if we want to grow customer accounts, what we need to do is we need to deliver an ROI on the customer's initial investment. And then they are ready to hear more, to listen to more. If we're then showing them, okay, this is how you can further grow your value, that's when they're going to believe us, because they already have that proof. They got their ROI on the initial investment, And now we're telling them, okay, if you are getting more resources, more features, more products, then you can solve additional problems. You can pursue higher value goals, things like this. And then it becomes more important. So we really need to put the customer first at every step of the journey. And what's best for the customer, if we are really keep growing the customer value, we will also keep growing the account value and the revenue. There's always a correlation between.
Mohammed?
If I may add, in the combination between the account plan and the success plan, I think those are two individual or two separate plans. I believe they should come from a source, which is the account strategy plan, where you bring not only sales and customer success, but products, marketing, support, and business. You bring everybody together to build a strategy plan for the customer, where you have the commitment from all stakeholders internally that they are committed to support, to help, to improve, to advance, to enhance, to increase efficiency. And then you drill it down and you create your success plan, where your success plan will help the sales to create the account plan. And then you go out to the market, to your customer, with one language that everybody inside the company understands. That's my.
No, definitely. And I think another sort of side question to that would be then, what would you do in a situation where you find decisions being made internally that are different to what you're seeing on the ground as a CSM? Say I'm working with the customer, and I'm understanding what some of their outcomes that they're looking for are, and I'm looking at what our internal goals are and where we want to go as an organization could be quite different. How would you try and maybe resolve that? Or what would you advise a CSM to do in that sort of situation? Maybe I'll pose that to you, Laura.
That's where you need that customer life cycle, because I think if everyone's bought in internally as to how a customer runs through the organization and then uses the product in the adoption phase, you've got an end-to-end tracking capability. And if you've peppered in, like rev ops and marketing ops, and you've got CS ops and product ops in there, and you're actually tracking across the org and everyone is aligned to specific OKRs, KPIs in order to drive a customer first strategy, that's where you're going to change the organization. You're not going to have those friction points, but everyone needs to be aligned, right? You can't have the sales team bringing in some business on an account that you're doing a renewal on, and they've cancelled part of the renewal, but the sales team get full commission on the part of the upsell, but they're not filling the cup on half of the renewal that you've just lost. So the CS team, get dinged on that, but the sales guy's just got loads of cash flowing out of his pocket. The business isn't winning either because they're just paying way too much on commission. So I see this stuff all the time. You have to align it at the company level, and you have to align it from a KPI perspective across the ELT in order to be customer first.
I think you see this a lot when folks think of CS as being at the end of a chain rather than being the start of what should influence the top. So Laura, to your point, what's happening in CS should really influence who sales is targeting and where, the direction that the product is going and things like. When you see organizations that think of CS as like that's where our customers land when we're done, and they just they live over there and that's it, we've done everything we need to do. That's when you start to see, again, like I talked about earlier, you start to see what your customers need and what your product is doing start to diverge. And it's when you start to lose that continuity internally about what are we doing with our product to make sure that we're fulfilling what our current customers need, because they're the ones who are currently sending us money. So we want to make sure that we're keeping up with what they need, and they're telling us the direction that the market in general is going, or the industry in general is going. When you lose that, when you start to think of CS as like a landing space where you just gather NPS scores, then you stop you stop getting that feedback back into the company that makes you better. And that's where ends start to fray and things stop matching up.
I love that. It's almost like saying customer success should be across the organization, right? And I think that's what everybody says, but very little.
My opinion is that customer success is the center of the universe, because everything should, we're very privileged as CS leaders to see everything end to end, right? From the moment we go out with a product to, how it's communicated and marketed, all the way through to how it's sold, and then how it comes through the organization. It could be partner led, it could be partner implemented, but then how your CS, your PS, and your support team provide that support in order to help that customer through to achieve their outcomes. That is a very privileged position to see everything end to end. And if the CS leader in that business isn't driving it and driving the customer first strategy across the whole business to help change how it operates, that SaaS business is not going to be here in a few years' time.
Absolutely. That's why I used to say customer success is a philosophy before it's a methodology.
Definitely.
So it's a company-wide philosophy, and customer success should be part of that philosophy and involve and influence everything from marketing to renewal, not only after sales engagement. So
well, renewal is, the center at the moment. Most businesses are really focusing on retention of those customers and the growth of their existing install base, because new business isn't as great as it was a few years ago. It will come back. As the economy, as the industry changes over the next couple of years. But until then, it's about the retention of that business and the retention of those customers, and how you grow those customers and drive those outcomes is, the utmost importance now across most SaaS businesses.
Exactly. I think I love that full circle moment that we hit the topic on the head there. I think with the wrapping it with philosophy of customer success. We've only got a couple minutes left. There's one question in there, in the Q&A box there. How do you build trust with stakeholders that are resistant to change? It's quite a broad question, but I'm assuming it could be maybe if we tackle it from maybe a customer's point of view. If a customer is being difficult, how do you then try and essentially, in the best way possible, break them down? Maybe I'll pose that question to you, Marcus.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to really building trust with the stakeholders, and it's important to understand the ulterior motives. And if you are facing customers that are really reluctant to change, there's almost always a specific reason for it.
Yeah.
And again, you need to apply active listening to really understand what drives the customer and why they are reluctant to change, so that you can really uncover the root causes and provide them with the right treatment. And at the end of the day, even the customer that is reluctant to change is pursuing some business goals and personal goals. They might be different. This might be different goals, but still, it works the same way.
Exactly. Any closing thoughts on that question?
Be persistent.
Be persistent. That's good. Maybe we'll end with one word each. Be persistent. What about yourself, Virginia? What would be your one word?
be patient.
Be patient. That's a good one.
Be organized about your responses.
Definitely. Amazing. Thank you all so much for that. That was fantastic. We hit, right on time, I think, as well. This discussion was amazing. I can't wait to get all those sound bites. I think I'm going to sit there for a week trying to dissect a lot of this stuff, and you might see me start at you guys quite a lot on LinkedIn, so I do apologize in advance.
Great, do it. I mean, some great sound bites in there. Yeah,
Definitely.
good pieces
Definitely.
to pull out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, no, definitely. I think maybe for the next 6 months, we've got we've got content in there for that, so I appreciate it. Marcus, I'm going to take maybe a leaf out of your book there, maybe your LinkedIn strategy. Or maybe you might see a few memes flying around as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the time you spent with me today. And yeah, I'm going to put the recording out It'll be out on YouTube soon, and I'll send it out to everyone that couldn't attend and everyone else that did attend. Thank you guys so much for spending the time with us.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cool.
See you soon.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.